Dementia doesn't always begin with memory loss. In many cases, it starts with subtle changes in how a person talks. Long before anyone forgets faces or names, the brain starts sounding alarms through tiny shifts in speech. Here's the unsettling truth. At first, they're the only one who notices. One day, they can't find a certain word. Soon, they start mixing up words or phrases and don't even realize it. Their speech suddenly sounds strange, unfamiliar, even to family members. These changes in speech can appear up to 10 years before dementia is ever diagnosed. But most people don't see it happening to themselves. That's why it's up to loved ones, close friends, to spot these signs before things go too far. When these clues appear, it means the brain has already started to decline, and unless something changes, it will continue to get worse. Catching these signals early gives the best shot at slowing or even preventing lasting damage. If you care about someone, don't ignore these subtle warnings. Before we dive into the life-saving details, make sure to hit subscribe and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss a tip that could protect you or your loved ones from the early warning signs of dementia. Let's begin. Number 1. Using incorrect words without realizing it. This isn't just normal word-finding trouble, where someone momentarily forgets the right word. Instead, they replace it with a completely unrelated one, and often speak with full confidence, unaware there's an error. A clinical study linked this speech change to damaged neural pathways, causing the brain to send mixed messages and swap words at random. This goes far beyond ordinary forgetfulness. It shows the brain is losing its ability to connect words with their meanings. For example, someone might say cluck instead of microwave, or call a dog a jacket, or a TV a window. At first, these slip-ups might seem funny or harmless, but with time, they become more frequent and harder to correct. Often, the person won't even believe they're wrong, even when corrected. This can lead to frustration or denial. Fatigue and stress make it worse, causing more mix-ups and bigger ones. A real case. Barbara, a 74-year-old retired government worker, began calling her cat the table. She looked right at it and said, "Come here, table." Her family laughed at first, until she started greeting other objects the same way. A brain scan later showed her mind was struggling to link words with their meanings. If you're finding this video helpful so far, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0. Your honest feedback matters. Second, trouble following conversations. Even a casual chat can suddenly feel overwhelming. Someone in the early stages of dementia may find it hard to keep up, especially in group settings. When several people talk at once, or when the pace speeds up, it becomes even tougher. Studies show this happens because the brain can't process spoken language fast enough, making it difficult to respond smoothly. They might ask, "Wait, what was that again?" They pause longer before answering, or seem lost or distracted. Sometimes they'll just nod along, not really understanding. As dementia progresses, they may begin avoiding conversations altogether, stepping back socially to hide their struggles. Example: David, 71, once loved dinner parties, but conversations became exhausting. His wife noticed he was quieter, more withdrawn. When she asked why, he admitted he couldn't keep up. He would forget comments seconds after hearing them. Concerned, his family took him to a specialist, where he was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment. Third, less emotion in speech. Dementia doesn't just steal memory, it slowly changes personality. It affects how someone speaks, reacts, and expresses feelings. Experts say people in early dementia start losing the natural ups and downs in their voice. Their speech becomes flat, monotone, almost robotic, missing the emotional tone we normally use. This happens because the brain areas controlling emotion and vocal tone begin to weaken. As a result, they stop showing excitement, frustration, or joy in their voice, even in moments that should spark feeling. Over time, their speech sounds distant, detached, making conversations feel cold and disconnected. Real case. Linda, 69, once warm and full of humor, began sounding different. Her daughter noticed her voice had lost its spark. Whether she talked about a favored show or a family event, her tone stayed the same, flat, emotionless. That subtle change turned out to be the first clue she was developing dementia. Number 4. Losing track of thoughts mid-sentence. A person with early dementia may start a sentence, then suddenly stop. Their mind goes blank. They can't remember what they were saying. A major study found that as dementia develops, the brain struggles to hold on to the thread of a conversation, making it harder to organize thoughts in real time. This leads to long pauses as they try to recall their point. Sentences trail off, leaving listeners unsure. You'll hear more filler words like you know, or he as they stall for time. Over time, these pauses grow longer and more frequent, making everyday conversations exhausting for both the speaker and those listening. Real case. Mark, 80, began noticing something strange. He'd start talking, then suddenly lose his train of thought. He'd stop mid-sentence, shake his head, and say, "Never mind, I forgot." At first, his wife brushed it off as normal aging. But when both she and their child noticed it getting worse, they decided to get help. Tests confirmed early-stage dementia. Someone in early dementia might also ask the same question repeatedly, even after it's been answered. Or they'll repeat whole phrases during a conversation without realizing it. Experts explain this happens because the brain can't hold on to short-term speech patterns, so the person isn't aware they're repeating themselves. As the condition progresses, these repetitions become more frequent and harder to stop, often frustrating family members who don't realize it's an involuntary symptom. They may also reuse the same words or phrases in different conversations, as if their mind is stuck on replay. That can make talk sound repetitive or disconnected, leaving loved ones unsure how to respond. Real case. Margaret, 67, kept asking, "Did I take my medicine?" Even after her husband answered, she'd repeat, "It's a nice day outside," several times in one chat, sometimes just moments apart. Her family thought she was just distracted or anxious, but when it started happening every day, they became concerned. After visiting a doctor with their daughter, they learned it wasn't simple forgetfulness, it was an early sign of dementia. Dementia isn't just about being forgetful, it's the gradual breakdown of brain function. One report found that once dementia reaches advanced stages, 93% of patients don't survive beyond 5 years. But here's the key point. Spotting these early speech changes is the only chance to stop it before it goes too far. The next 4 signs are even more alarming, and the most surprising one is still ahead. If you're still watching, comment 1 and hit the like button to let us know you're with us. Number 6. Mixing up pronouns and verb tenses. Instead of saying, "He went to the store," they might say, "They go to the store." They'll mix past and present, saying things like, "I go there yesterday." At first, these slips sound minor, but over time they become more common and less predictable, usually without the person noticing. Research shows dementia patients often confuse pronouns and tenses, struggling to build clear, structured sentences. As the illness progresses, their speech grows choppier and harder for others to follow. This isn't just a small grammar mistake, it's a sign that the brain can't properly organize language or track time, leading to growing confusion in everyday life. Real case: Carlos, 77, began mixing up pronouns and tenses in casual conversation. He'd say things like, "She is my son," or "I go to church last week," leaving his family puzzled. At first, they thought he was joking, but as these errors became more frequent and stranger, they realized something was wrong. A cognitive exam confirmed what they feared: early onset dementia. Number 7. Trouble finding the right words. You know exactly what you want to say, but the right word just won't come. You pause, struggle to recall it, or say the wrong one by mistake. The frustration builds as your brain searches, but nothing fits. Studies show that people in the early stages of dementia often substitute words, using fillers like "thing" or "that stuff" instead of the exact term. Over time, they rely more on vague descriptions, saying, "the round thing you eat with," instead of "spoon." That's because the brain's word-finding network weakens, making even simple vocabulary harder to recall. As this worsens, you'll notice longer pauses, unfinished thoughts, or rising frustration in conversation. Real case: Anna, 66, a retired teacher, realized something was wrong when she couldn't remember simple words while chatting with her grandkids. Instead of refrigerator, she'd say, "that cold thing." Her family dismissed it as normal aging until it started happening every day. A brain scan confirmed early-stage Alzheimer's. Number 8. Using shorter, simpler sentences. Someone who once spoke fluidly now cuts sentences short, removing details and complexity. Instead of saying, "I went to the store, picked up some groceries, and stopped for coffee," they might say, "went store, got food, had coffee." Their speech becomes choppy and broken, making conversations sound unnatural. A major study found that sentence length and complexity shrink as cognitive decline. When the brain struggles to connect ideas, it compensates by simplifying speech. Over time, this pattern deepens, making responses sound robotic, vague, or overly brief. They may also pause more often or use plain, repetitive phrases instead of descriptive language. Real case: John, 70, a former journalist, was known for his vivid storytelling. But as time passed, his speech became oddly short. Instead of describing his day in detail to his wife, he'd just say, "walked dog, saw friend, came home." The change was obvious, but his family thought he was just tired, until testing revealed mild cognitive impairment progressing toward dementia. Number 9. Slurred or slowed speech. Dementia doesn't only affect memory, it can physically alter speech, making the voice harder to understand over time. A clinical study linked early dementia to poor coordination of the tongue, lips, and vocal cords, causing slurred, slower, or muffled speech. At first, this might look like fatigue or minor confusion, but as the condition advances, speech can grow jumbled and hesitant. People may struggle to pronounce words or pause mid-sentence as the brain battles to control vocal movement. If someone's speech suddenly becomes slower, softer, or less clear, it could signal neurological decline, and it should never be ignored. Diane, 83, a retired nurse, developed a slow, almost slurred way of talking. Her words stretched out, and she struggled to pronounce syllables she'd always said easily. Assuming it was a small speech issue, her family waited months before seeking help. Doctors eventually found she had vascular dementia. When these speech changes appear, it means the brain, yours or a loved one's, has already been affected. This isn't simple aging, it's neurological decline. And once it begins, it won't stop on its own. That's why prevention matters so much. Strengthen your brain now, because once damage sets in, it can't be reversed. Before you go, take a second, hit subscribe if you haven't already, so you never miss our practical health insights. Which speech sign stood out to you the most? Drop your thoughts, questions, or stories below. Your comments inspire us to keep sharing life-changing health advice. And if this helped you, please share it with someone you care about.